about fears. Let's talk about love. Yeah, I got fears, but I ain't got no love.
Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, even your relatives' information, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Kenmains here from Unsolved No More. Listen, every once in a while, a product comes along that changes the game. That's Aura. It's so easy to set up. I did it in under 3 minutes. Listen, my family is my number one priority. Keeping them safe. It's your priority too. That's why I partnered with Aura. 24/7 monitoring, parental controls, antivirus, and so much more in one app. Listen, you guys know I'm huge on integrity, and I would never endorse something that I did not personally use or believe in. And that's why I'm asking you to sign up for a free 2-week trial of Aura. Just go to the link below in the comments, in the description, www.aura.com/unsolvednomore. Sign up for your 2-week free trial and get the protection that you and your family deserves. Okay, today we're going to discuss the unsolved homicide of Kathy Lynn Gloddy from 1971 in Franklin, New Hampshire. When I first saw this, I saw Franklin and I thought of Teresa Corley, the case that I did last year, because that was from Franklin, but it was Franklin, Massachusetts. Who knew there was 2 unsolved murders in a town called Franklin? Probably more than 2. There's probably a lot of Franklins throughout the United States. So, this is not really a complicated case, but it can become complicated depending on how you look at it. So, this happened on a Sunday, November 21st, 1971. Kathy Gloddy was a 13-year-old white female. She was 5'2", about 100 pounds. She basically went to the store with her dog. The dog returned. She never did. The next day, her body was found about 3 miles from her home, and she was brutally murdered. Now, is there a difference between being murdered and brutally murdered? Yeah, I guess depending on some circumstances here when we get into the crime scene and the autopsy stuff, you'll see what I mean by when I say brutally. Now, this case, people ask me, how do I come up with cases? And sometimes I'll get a suggestion, but a lot of times it's just doing some research myself, looking through old newspaper clippings of not famous cases. Now, this one is a little bit more famous because I think it was portrayed on 2020 at one point. So this has gotten some notoriety. But when I saw her picture, I don't know. It's weird. Sometimes I'll see a photograph of a victim and I feel like I need to do something. I need to do a video on it or something to that extent. Hence, Kathy Gloddy today. And then I seen that her sister had written a book. And when I seen the cover of the book, I'm like, I've seen that before. Then I seen the author's name and I was like, I swear she sent me a book a long time ago. And I searched all over for it and I couldn't find it. Now, I know my mind is slipping the older I get, but I swear that that is the case. So, there's a reason this is popping back up to me. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to offer my input from what I see. So, again, Kathy Gloddy, 13-year-old white female from Franklin, New Hampshire. This is her house, as you can see, and this is the house that she left from on her way to the store. Now, before we get into her travels, we obviously have to talk about what? Victimology. And we have to determine, is she a high-risk victim? And normally, as you know, children are not, depending upon their environments and how they're being cared for, the area of which they are in. None of that seems to be a detriment to young Kathy here. She seems to have been in a well-loved family, numerous brothers and sisters, at least one brother that I read. I believe his name was Roger. And her sisters who all loved her and cared for her, and a mom and dad that obviously loved and cared for her too. So, although there were some indications that there was a part of, I want to say, Webster Street where she was found, her body was unsafe and had unsavory characters. I mean, you're going to get that no matter where you are in the United States. So I didn't take too much stock into that. But she was a tomboy. And one of her friends said that she would, if she was attacked, she would fight. She was fast and she was strong. She played, backlot baseball. I miss that. Getting friends together and going and play. I mean, that's a lost art. And she was better than most boys, according to all accounts. She was very feisty when it came to that stuff. And that is very important as we go along in this case assessment as to what happened to Kathy. So she was not a high-risk victim at all. There's somebody in that area who took advantage of Kathy. And we'll get into whether it's somebody she knows, somebody that's from out of town, stuff like that. And a lot of this we don't know from certainty, but we will be able to deduce possibilities to get to probabilities in order to make an accurate assessment. And that's all we're trying to do here. Keep the name out there for the victim and the victim's families. Again, I want to say her name is Karen Bowden, who had written a book about her sister's murder. I encourage you all to go and check that out. I'm sure if you just, typed in Kathy Gloddy, you'll find the book. So, I gave you the overview of the case. The family living at 12 East High Street in Franklin, and around 5 o'clock p.m., Kathy says that she is going to Bell's Variety Store in order to get ice cream and potato sticks. Potato sticks were one of her favorite snacks, allegedly. She took the German Shepherd pet family dog with her, and she went. At 5:30, she leaves the store. Now, this is verified. Remember, this is 1971, so there's no cameras or anything like that. This is when you had to do real police work. And that's why a lot of these cases are unsolved from back then. We don't have the technology and stuff that we do today. We didn't have cell phones in 1971 to ping to see if a suspect was near somebody. Didn't have security cameras to see if a car went by. None of that stuff. But she was verified to be at Bell's Variety Store. So, Bell's Variety Store is on Franklin Street. I searched high and low to try to find out where on Franklin Street this store was, because I like to trace the victim's route. I couldn't find it. I found Franklin Street, very close to where she lived on High Street, but I couldn't find it. But that's not the last sighting of her. Okay. She's next seen at the local high school. Now, I didn't see who the witness was that reported this, but Kathy's sister was performing there at the time. So is that why Kathy went there to see her or what? I don't know. But regardless, that's the last that she's found until 1:00 p.m. the next day. A hunter finds her body in the woods about 3 miles from her house and I don't exactly know where. It just says, actually, I'll read what I wrote down here. Chance Pond Road, which I was able to find, near Webster Street, which I couldn't find, between Flag Hole Road and New Hampshire 11, I believe. So I was able to get pretty close to where I think her body was found, in this general area near Chance Pond. When she's found, the only thing that's found is remnants of an ice cream cone and the top, I believe, of a potato stick can. So, why is retracing a route important? Okay, I want to know, look what the distance is between Franklin Street to the high school. Okay. Does she have enough time? Because she's going to start eating that ice cream cone right away, as soon as she gets it. Is it going to be all gone by the time she gets to the high school? I mean, I would think, but she has potato sticks too, so maybe she's eating both. It's important because of what? The ice cream cone remnants being found next to the body. So by remnants, I'm assuming that she didn't get to eat all of the ice cream, that she still had it. Now, that just bothers me, okay? If somebody is abducted off of the street, why or how are they going to hold on to an ice cream cone if where she's found in a wooded area near Chance Pond is a body dump location, which law enforcement has come out and said? I think you can deduce that she's not abducted right off of that. That has to be a possibility. And I thought about that when she went to the high school. First thing that popped into my mind was Ted Bundy, and he took a victim out of a high school once. I'm not saying this is a serial offender, and in fact, I don't believe it is, and I'll get into why I think the way I'm thinking. But that ice cream cone remnant, if it's a partially eaten ice cream cone, she wasn't abducted. Because even if she was abducted and thrown in the car and she held onto that ice cream cone, you telling me that she's going to hold on to it while she's out into the getting murdered, or whether she's being assaulted or what, and then it ends up next to her? It doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, you got to get rid of it. So I don't believe she was abducted. Now, let's get into the area. Is a secluded area, but people go there a lot. It was known as like a lover's lane area. There was a little dirt driveway that went into this area, I guess. I would really like to see pictures of that scene, but I caught a glimpse of it in a short video that the private investigator did from that area. Of course, it's, 50 years later or whatnot, but still, the big stones that I saw that were there, I was able to see where I think this area was. So it was kind of secluded. Um, so the body itself, after the autopsy, it was determined that she was beaten. She had a head wound of some sort, and I don't know particular whether that was a blunt force object or if it was hands and fists, but she had a head injury. She also had broken ribs. She had a neck injury and abdomen. So she was strangled, she was raped, and she was run over, according to the medical examiner, 4 times. Okay, so let's stop there and see what we can deduce. Number 1, the offender had a car. Okay? The offender didn't show up on foot. The offender didn't meet her on foot at the high school, crossing paths. He abducts her, kills her, rapes her. He has a car. Run over 4 times. Beaten and strangled. Agreed sex revenge. Now, which one is this? She was sexually assaulted, folks. She was found naked with only her knee-high socks on. Where's the rest of her clothing? Right? That tells me that if her clothing is not there, the crime didn't happen there. Now, let's say just her underwear was missing, but her jeans and coat and everything. Remember, this was November. Then I would say, well, maybe he took it as a trophy. But when all those things are missing, I would say that, no, the crime didn't happen there. That was a body dump location. So now we've deduced that the offender has a car. The offender didn't grab her off the street. And she wouldn't get, and I failed to mention this, she wouldn't get into cars with strangers according to her victimology. And that's not the case for everybody, especially during that time. But she wouldn't. So now that leads me to believe that she knew the offender. In fact, it's my belief that she certainly knew the offender, but she probably had other dealings with this offender. I'll get into more of that as we go by. There was semen found inside of her, a large quantity. Yet, the forensic pathologist failed to collect that evidence. I know DNA wasn't around in 1971. That's all I can say about that. Let's fast forward to the case goes cold. Okay? Very quickly. I mean, there's no evidence. They fingerprinted the potato chip can or whatever, that potato stick top, nothing. I mean, without DNA, you have semen in her, but I mean, that's it. Nowadays, that case would have been a done deal. But back then, it just went cold. So we fast forward until March of 2006. Remember, this happened in 1971. There's no movement on this, really, until 2006, when a 63-year-old man named Ed Duket walks into a Florida police station and says, "I need to be arrested." And they said, "What for?" He said, "Murder." So they end up talking to Mr. Ed. There's a television show named Mr. Ed, Talking Horse. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not, but I'm going to stick with Mr. Ed. Mr. Ed says, "I killed a girl in New Hampshire." He didn't know her first name, but he said Gloddy. And he went on to spin this tale that he used to take Kathy Gloddy fishing. And on these fishing excursions, he would molest her. Whether it's willing or not, it's still sexual assault and molestation. She's 13. She can't give consent. Okay? But he says that on this day, he was with her when she was alive, and he was with her when she was dead. That he remembers that she fell in the water, and he went and got her, and she was limp, and he pulled her out, and he buried her because she was dead. Now see how some of that stuff doesn't make sense. There was no indication she was in the water. Okay, her hair would have still been wet. It's in November. Her socks would have been wet, and she wasn't buried. And it's November. Now, maybe some people fish in November. You do ice fishing, I guess, but his story just doesn't make sense. But what does make sense is Mr. Ed is somebody that Kathy did know. Because Mr. Ed lived in the apartment above the Gloddy family, and actually, I believe, was being rented from Mr. Gloddy. Mr. Gloddy had at some point evicted Mr. Ed. And if we want to run that revenge narrative a little bit further than that, Kathy Gloddy's father also was on a jury that convicted Mr. Ed's father of a statutory rape. So, when we go back to greed, sex, or revenge, there's the possibility of the revenge there. But I'm comfortable with crossing that out because Kathy was sexually assaulted. If you want to take revenge on somebody, you don't sexually assault them and kill them. You just kill them. You get rid of them. This is a deliberate act by somebody. And it's not for revenge. It's for sexual gratification. Period. End of story. So, that was in March of 2006 when Mr. Ed walked into the police station with his oxygen tank and confessed. So later on in 2006, the New Hampshire Police Department, or the state police, in conjunction probably with the medical examiner and others, decide to exhume young Kathy's body. Now, this is not an uncommon step to do in investigations, but it is kind of rare, okay? Meaning, yes, it happens, but it doesn't happen a lot. The Teresa Corley case that I had just mentioned, not just mentioned, but at the beginning of this video, they exhumed her body as well. Now, why? Well, because you are looking for evidence that you can test today that you couldn't back in 1971. For instance, I am guessing, and I'm not privy to this information, but I am guessing that because the police department knew that there was a large amount of semen inside Kathy, that they thought there was a possibility to retrieve that, and because Mr. Ed confessed, and when he confessed, they were smart enough to take the water bottles that he was drinking from and an inhaler that he had for evidence, for DNA purposes. Very smart move. I'm assuming that they say, well, okay, well, we have Mr. Ed's DNA. If that is Mr. Ed's DNA inside Kathy after we exhume her, we solved this case. Well, because if they didn't have Mr. Ed, he would have never confessed, and he was a suspect, they say, at the time. I don't know if they're just saying that or not. But if he never confessed, I don't think they would have exhumed Kathy's body. But because Ed did, they can now compare if they find anything. But apparently they did not find anything. Now, it was probably degraded after 50 years, But it's worth the effort. If the family agrees, that's when I say you can exhume a body, of a victim. If the family says, yes, give it a shot, then you do it. And they did. And looks like they struck out. But they tried. So when they look into Mr. Ed's background, he had a conviction, I believe, previous to this for a statutory rape. He fled the area, I believe, and went to California where he did it again. And he let the person go after holding her captive for an amount of time. And he got convicted of that. Now that, I think, if Mr. Ed is telling the truth, or, if I believe that he is the offender here, that could be a possible reason to why Kathy is dead. Because, listen, the last witness that I did this to told on me. I'm not making that same mistake. That happens all the time. I'm not saying it happened here, but it does happen. Let me get into what a profile of the offender. Okay? And it's not complete, and there's only a couple things that I could deduce that I feel confident about saying publicly. One is, number one, people said, well, this could have been a hit and run. What? She was sexually assaulted. There's no hit and run. Okay? And she was run over 4 times. There's no hit and run. That's intentional. Okay? That's running over. But there's a reason I believe the offender did this, which leads me to believe this was the offender's most likely his first killing. It was the first time that he ever physically, hands-on, killed somebody. And I believe that this murder happened either in the car or in front of or behind the car, one or the other. Now, why do I make this assumption that he has never killed before? Hands-on, anyhow. People don't understand how hard it is to strangle somebody to death. Not unconscious, but to death. There are first-time murderers who I've spoke with who have wrapped their hands around somebody's neck and choked somebody out until they thought they were dead, only to hear them come back to their surprise. It takes a lot of effort to physically strangle somebody to death. And if you don't know that, and if you're not used to that, it could be a problem. Meaning, how do I kill this person? Punching. She's not dying. I got my car here. I'm going to run her over 4 times, back, forth. That will make sure that she's dead. Then you place the body in the car and you take it to that location. Now, the only explanation that I have for the halfway eating ice cream remnants is that they were there at some point in time other than the body dump location. I guess it's possible that he's cleaning out the car after he's killed her, and he throws the potato stick can, only the top, where's the rest of it, and the ice cream remnant out there. But that doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense. Why not throw her clothes out there too? So, or why are those items there in the absence of the other items? The clothing, the rest of the potato stick can. Okay? So that bothers me, that I can't make sense of it. Now, I don't know how big this area is. I don't know that everything could have happened right there. Meaning this. And this is possible, if not probable. She gets into a car with somebody she knows, and they drive to this location where her body's found, where everyone is saying it's a body dump location. And something happens there. Obviously, he kills her there, but they're there for a reason. A sexual attempt. It reminds me a lot of the Jennifer Hill case, where the offender took her to a cornfield in order to have some sort of sexual interlude. And Jennifer Hill was 12. And Jennifer Hill was a tomboy too. Man, a lot of coincidences. But I believe that, at least in the Jennifer Hill case, she rebuffed the offender and he snapped and he killed her. This could have been the same thing. But it makes sense to me that it happened there, but I can't see the complete area there, So that's the only thing that makes sense to me of her leaving the potato top can and her ice cream there, but not her clothes. I just can't make sense of that. But all of that fits Mr. Ed. Let's talk about Mr. Ed's confession. Remember, they went fishing together. She falls in the water, dies. First of all, why would a person interject themselves into a 50-year-old case? Well, maybe it wasn't 50 at that time. 40. Why? He's gotten away with this. Nobody's looking at him, really. And he's in a different state. And he walks into a police station. Well, come to find out that he has had a come to Jesus moment. And he goes to church, and he's a big believer in that. Nothing wrong with that. But I do know that one of the first things you have to do if you are a believer in Jesus Christ is ask for forgiveness for all your sins. Maybe because of that, this was weighing heavily on Mr. Ed's shoulders. Now, why doesn't he just confess to his preacher, his pastor? Maybe he did. But he goes in and says he needs to be arrested for it. He's interjecting himself into this case when he doesn't have to. I believe it's to unburden himself. Now, the story he weaves doesn't make sense. Now, later, he's going to recant this confession, and he's going to say, listen, I was on medicine. It messes me all up. They were giving me a spinal tap, and I don't know what I'm talking about. No, you're full of crap. Okay, you do know what you're talking about. But to me, he's minimizing what he's done. Meaning, people will say things like, yeah, I killed that kid. But I didn't sexually assault him. When there's clear evidence, semen inside, that they did. They're minimizing. They don't want to say the really bad thing. Well, this is okay. I killed him, but he's doing the same thing here. He's weaving a story that doesn't make sense because he doesn't want to tell the real story. The real story meaning, hey, he molested her and then he killed her. He ran her over. He did all these horrible things to her. Now, do I believe that Mr. Ed is the perpetrator? Well, he meets all the criteria for me when I look at the case and look at greed, sex, revenge, the criminal profile. I believed it was somebody that she knew. He lived right above her. He would have a past criminal history of such attempts, but not as serious. Well, he did. Now, if he was convicted of a crime like this and he had gone to jail, there's reason to believe that he does not want to go back to jail. So he has to kill Kathy because Kathy can identify him, much like the previous victim did. Much like when he goes in 2006 to confess and then he recants. Listen, I got it off my chest. I didn't really mean it. Okay. Because he doesn't want to go to jail, right? It seems counterintuitive that he even walked into the police station to begin with. But people underestimate the effect that murder has on some people. Sociopaths and psychopaths are different. But a normal person who isn't a sociopath has things called feelings. They have things called remorse. It's things me and you have. We share that. And if we kill somebody at night, toss, turn, can't believe it happened. What am I going to do? It's eating me up. I'm having nightmares. She's haunting my dreams. I arrested a guy once. No, I didn't arrest him. I took him to the hospital. I had a warrant for his DNA. We were going to draw blood. He's a murder suspect. Going to pluck hair. And right after we did that, he wanted to smoke a cigarette. He thought he was going to jail. I thought he was going to jail. He had just confessed. And he wanted to smoke. And I said, do you ever think about what you did? And he took a big puff. You have no idea, man. That chick haunted my dreams. Now, there you go. Now, in that case, he wasn't arrested right then. In fact, when I called the district attorney, she said, hey, let him go. What? He just confessed. He just led me to the body that I knew was going to be there, although it wasn't there because his partner moved it. But regardless, let him go. So we let him go. My point being, sorry, still get irritated about that a little bit. Mr. Ed confessed, but he minimized his involvement. And then he retracted because he did not want to go to jail. But he got it off his chest. He did what he wanted to do. He accomplished that. I would like to know exactly when Mr. Ed moved out of New Hampshire. A lot of times, offenders will leave the area. Sometimes they don't. But he did at some point in time because he obviously was in Florida. Again, I start on a roll sometimes and I forget where I'm going with this. But I did talk about, yes, it was his first time killing. He couldn't strangle her to death, and that's why he ran her over numerous times. I believe that's why that occurred. to ensure death. Okay? He probably was choking her out. She fought back. A lot of times, people will say, well, the offender had to have scratches on him. But that's not necessarily true. Kathy is a fighter, okay? And she's going to fight. But it's November. They're going to have like long sleeve shirts on and things. So, yes, if it's possible, if she could get her hands up and scratch his face, but it's not hard to control, somebody by just pinning their arms down. But he probably certainly had some sort of injuries of some sort. But there was another suspect. And he was a Vietnam vet, I think. And he had spun a story to a friend. I really didn't look into him very much. And again, in this channel, I don't like to delve into the suspects a lot. It's a general overall view of the crime and what type of person more than likely would commit that crime. And Ed Duket certainly fits and checks all those boxes. And I'm not saying he's guilty, but it's more probable than not that he, from what I see, could change. Everything could change once I would read the actual police reports. Okay. But from everything that was let out from the newspapers, from my training, my experience, this is what I see in this case. And he is a very, 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 very good suspect. I wanted to also, so there was a private investigator was hired by the family, or he's doing it pro bono. He was the one on 20 and 20. Great and guy, it seems, really cares. But he had a quote that was in the newspaper that really rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm hoping that he's misquoted on. And if not, hey, that's fine. Everybody has their own opinions. I just think this is wrong. And I'll read it to you here. He said, and this is in regards to Kathy Gloddy, obviously. The kind of brutality and rage-driven crime can only come from someone that knew her or knew her family. Now that is just a complete false. That's a false narrative. That's not true at all. And I hope he's misquoted on that. The kind of brutality and rage-driven crime that was done to Kathy can only come from someone that knew her or her family. Think about what Ted Bundy did to his victims. He didn't know them. BTK, he didn't know them. And those are just famous serial offenders that I'm naming. It's not even the hundreds of thousands of people that have killed and beaten and overkilled, everybody likes to use that word, that didn't know their victim. You can't say that. Now, I agree with them that it was somebody that probably knew her, but you can't tell that because of the brutality of the crime. That makes no sense. Right? No, I'm just saying that's my opinion. This man can have any opinion that he wants, and, I respect him and his opinions, but I can also just say I don't agree with that at all. Not at all. So, let me go over my notes here and see if I missed anything. She lived at 12 East High Street in Franklin. Tomboy. She would fight. She was strong and fast. This happened on a Sunday, November 21st, 1971. She went to the store for potato sticks and ice cream with dog. The dog returned home, and she didn't. The timeline we went over, 5 o'clock. She went to Bell's Variety Store. She left that store at 5:30 p.m. At 11 p.m., she was reported missing. At 1 p.m. the following day, her body was found. And then in March of 2006, Duket confessed. In 2006, her body was exhumed. And that's basically all we have on that. The body dump location, 3 miles from the home. Again, when you look at the map, I have a general location, but I don't have an exact spot. But it's along that road. Greed, sex, or revenge. Narrowed it down really quickly to sex and revenge. The only reason I kept revenge on there was because of the dad being on the jury that convicted Duket's father, but also the eviction. When was he evicted? Did he live there while the day Kathy went missing? If not, where did he live? That's important to know as well. It's obviously a sexually motivated crime. There's no doubt about that. I have written down here evidence, semen with a big question mark. I know they didn't collect it, and I just don't know why. I get it's 1971, and you are not looking for DNA, but phosphates. I mean, that's your evidence. Like, she's 13. She's not having consensual sex. Okay? We can make that assumption. But even so, that's the only thing that we have in this case that is not hers. That is evidence. You have to collect it. I don't understand it. I know it's 1971, and maybe it's just because I wasn't alive in 1971 and I don't know how they do things. But it just seems to me that's, hey, she was sexually assaulted. There's semen in her. That's the offender. We have to take it. I mean, we just have to take it for future purposes. If anything, nothing else. I know they can't predict the future. But anyhow, am I the only one that goes crazy over that? Red flags, wearing only socks. It's just because he didn't take the time to take her socks off, which means, I guess you can't tell 100% whether it was consensual or not. Now, you hate to say that. You never want to degrade the family member, right? But I'm just saying, off of the socks being on, you can't tell that it was or was not consensual. Listen, I believe that this was non-consensual. But just based off of that, you can't tell. Did not collect sperm. I wrote down again. Another quote that bothers me. I read in a newspaper article that Kathy Gloddy's brother was interviewed. He was in Vietnam, and when he came back, he was met by police. And he said he knew right off the bat that this investigation was not going to go well. Because one of the police officers or detectives said to him, "You could have done it." And he said, I reminded him I was in Vietnam. I was in the army. I wasn't even there. Why would you say that to a victim's family member? Even if you believed it. It's the most idiotic thing that I could think you would say. This guy just learned that his sister was murdered. And you're going to come to him and say that? Oh, you could have done it. What a joke. See, there's certain people that don't need to be in the profession. That's one of them. Man, if I was his supervisor, not a hit and run because it was a sexual assault. People that think that are just don't listen to him. First time killing, strangulation didn't work, and he ran over to ensure death. Blunt injuries to the head, neck, and abdomen. Ran over 4 times. I'm sure that was front, back, front, back. That's that's it. That's all I have for this case. I did reach out to Kathy's sister on her webpage, but I didn't hear back from her, and I wanted to get this video out. So in the off chance that she does get back to me and provides me with more material, I will be doing a follow-up to this video. Again, there's certain cases that just for whatever reason made me feel a certain way that I got to get out and I got to talk about it. And, you know, I have the platform here to do it, and hopefully this will get out. Who knows? I'm not saying 100% it was Ed. He just fits and checks the boxes for sure. He's not looking for attention. And that's another thing that made me believe that he was telling the truth in regards to being responsible for Kathy's death. Not the whole fishing. He's minimizing that. He doesn't want to say exactly what he did. And I bet that if you went back and looked at his other convictions for rape or statutory assault, whatever charge was, he minimized in those interviews and I believe he probably did talk to police, and he probably minimized and said something like, well, we had a consensual relationship, when it clearly wasn't. I'm guessing here. He checks the boxes. Okay. So that's it for this deep dive on Kathy Gloddy. If anybody out there is friends or family members of Kathy, my condolences and prayers to you, and I hope that this case gets solved. And I think it's a possibility because Ed seems to have want to get things off of his chest. And if Ed was responsible, maybe he told a more accurate story to somebody else. I just wish there was evidence left on Kathy's body that could point to somebody today. Again, thoughts and prayers to the victim and the victim's families. And I hope I done Kathy justice with this. It's my thoughts. Things could change if I get more information available to me, but that's what I see in Kathy Gloddy's case. So with that said, thanks for watching. Mains out. Alright, I could have let the video go right there in this assessment, but when I went to bed last night and I had all day after I did this video to think about things, and one thing that I failed to address that's been bothering me is the dog, right? Remember, she took the German Shepherd to go to Bell's Variety Store, and I'd come to my initial assessment that she went with somebody she knew because mostly of the ice cream cone remnant. You know, if she was abducted, let's say at the high school where she was last seen or walking from there, she wouldn't still have the ice cream cone if there was a struggle. Because the ice cream cone, allegedly, from what I read, was found at the body dump location, or it could be a crime scene, but police are calling it the body dump location. So I assume that she went willingly with whoever. Could have been Mr. Duket. But I forgot to take into account the dog that returned back to the house, frantically scratching at the door, going through the house as if he was searching for Kathy. Now, that makes me believe right off the bat that she was abducted. So, because she wouldn't voluntarily leave her dog a mile, 2 miles from the home, right? That doesn't make sense either. So there's a contradiction there that just, it doesn't make sense to me, and I'm having a hard time figuring that out. Why is the ice cream cone remnant at the body dump location which indicates to me she knew the person and there wasn't a struggle somewhere else and she was taken there, with the dichotomy of the dog being left to fend for itself. The dog being left makes me initially, and make anybody think that she was abducted. But it's a German Shepherd. I need to know more about this dog. Yes, it's a family dog, but German Shepherds are known to be protective, and they're scary dogs. So would a stranger try to abduct a girl that has a German Shepherd, large German Shepherd, with her? And if there was a forcible struggle, I don't see that German Shepherd cowering away, right? So I have to think of the possibility still that she got into a vehicle with somebody she knew who also was familiar with that dog. And the dog was also in that vehicle. Now, the only way the ice cream cone and the dog scenario makes sense is if the dog, the offender, and Kathy all went to that location, that Lover's Lane type of area, and something happened there where maybe the dog, that doesn't make sense either. I was thinking that the dog could be contained in the back seat while the offender is doing his dastardly deed. Yet, that doesn't make sense, because I feel if that was the case, the guy gets done doing what he's doing, he lets the dog out. I don't think the dog would leave Kathy's side. And plus, that's a 3-mile jaunt back to the Gloddy residence. Whereas the high school where she was last seen, I believe, is only a mile from her house. And it makes more sense that the dog... Man, that dog scenario throws everything into a conundrum for me. I can't wrap my brain around it. So when I doing a case assessment, it's usually the most plausible scenarios, right? Without going down rabbit holes. The most plausible scenario for that dog is that she was abducted, forcefully taken, right? That's the only way she would leave her dog. Much like Johnny Gosh, remember with him in his wagon? I can't make sense of this now. Something doesn't make sense to me. Either the ice cream cone remnant theory is wrong. I have to know that for a fact. What is this ice cream cone remnant? Is it a cone? Is it a napkin that they place around the cone? Was there halfway eaten ice cream or something like that? Because of these, especially that, I can't say for sure. I can't give a proper assessment of where this happened and if she was abducted or if she went there willingly until I know that. Until I know that about the dog too. How long did the dog take to get home? If she was last seen 5:30 with the dog, maybe even 6 o'clock at the high school, because I never heard who the witness was who saw her at the high school. Who was that? And there was no mention of her being with the dog. I had no mention of that at Bell's Variety store either. Maybe it's possible she told the dog to go home, from Bell's variety store because that is closer to the home. I don't know. I need to know more about her interaction with this German Shepherd. Like, there's just too much left out that I don't know that I need to know to make a proper assessment. Right? This has been bugging me all night. So I had to jump back on here because I would be doing a disservice to the Gloddy family and friends putting out an assessment that wasn't accurate because I don't have all the information. Now, that's true in most cases that I do on this channel, but I can still make the inferences and connect the dots on most things. But because it makes sense. This case, those things don't make sense. The dog and the ice cream, right? I mean, right now, if I was to make a documentary about this case, right now I would have to name it The Dog and the Ice Cream because just like Teresa Corley case in the Quaaludes and eggs, no mention of her eating eggs anywhere, but yet she's dropped off next to a police station by the truck driver, and there's a 24-hour restaurant there, or a restaurant that opens up at 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning for truckers. And then when they do the autopsy, they find eggs in her stomach. And I said, well, she ate there and caught the eye of a trucker. But that can't discount that she had just been sexually assaulted a few hours earlier and stormed out of the apartment. That's a coincidence that you have to look into as well. So because of that, the Quaalude and eggs, it didn't quite make sense. There were some questions there still that I had. And now the Quaalude and eggs, because we didn't know whether that's true. There was a family member that remembered reading that in the autopsy report, but there was no mention of it anywhere else. Now here, in a newspaper article, it mentions the ice cream remnant being found near her body and the potato sticks top. Where's the can? It's still in the car because I feel that more than likely that the assault happened in the car. And it could have happened right there. That is what makes most sense, is that it happened right there. But the dog throws a monkey wrench into that scenario. The dog is not just going to stand by while she's getting assaulted and murdered. This is a tough one, folks. I have to admit. Until more evidence comes out, or maybe Kathy's sister or brother gets a hold of me, I will refrain from making a final conclusion on whether she was abducted and what happened. I just feel I'm doing a disservice if I put my ego ahead of everything else. I think a good investigator has to be able to say, wait a second, slow your roll. We don't have all the information yet, so we can't say for sure. That's how innocent people get locked up. Remember I said Mr. Ed Duket checks all the boxes, and he certainly does. And he would fit any scenario, whether she was physically abducted or she went willingly. But I can't make sense of the ice cream and the dog right now. Maybe if I think on this some more, I can come up with a scenario that makes sense. But right now, I can't, and I'm just going to leave it at that. It's going to bother me. It's going to bug me until I figure it out. But look for a follow-up video in the future. That's all I can say. This is a tough one. This is a tough one to figure out. And it bothered me so much that I had to come down here and give that update on it. I was laying in bed and was thinking about the case, which I do with a lot of cases, and just the dog came back to me, and I was like, wait a second. I didn't even address that dog other than saying it came back to the house. Right away, that means she was abducted. But then I thought, no, the dog will fight. And then the dog could have went with willingly, got in a car, maybe the back of a pickup truck. Would make more sense. Where was that dog spotted? Did anybody see the dog roaming around, and at what time? That could narrow down the timeline. Listen, the police might have all this information and they're not letting it out. But man, it makes the job that much more difficult. And I know I'm not investigating the case, and I'm just doing an overall assessment for the channel, but this is going out to hundreds of thousands of people in some cases. I want to be as articulate and transparent, I guess, as possible to say I don't know, because I don't have all the information. I can't figure it out. I know I said that 100 times. Can't help it. It's bothering me. But if I come up with something else, I'll let you guys know. I'll do another video. All right. Again, to the family and friends of Kathy Gloddy, thoughts and prayers. God bless you. And hang tight. There'll be resolution somehow, some way. We'll get it figured out. Thanks for watching. This update, mains out.